All right, we're back at it again. Ric Serritella with Dan Orlando, New and Blue, a New York Giants podcast. We're here live each and every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Today is October 6, 2025. We're going to recap week 5 of the Big Blue, preview week 6 of New and Blue, New York Giants podcast. We focus on the new Big Blue Giants players, rookies, free agent signings, of course, everything else sprinkled in between with Dan Orlando. Ric Serritella here. How you doing, Dan?
Well, I was doing better before 105 yesterday, but I'm doing all right. Can't complain. Solid weekend.
Solid weekend overall, but the Giants. I was so hyped. I saw the Giants fans taking over Bourbon Street. We had all the momentum going on. Jackson Dart looked promising, and they came out firing Theo Johnson, big 2 touchdowns early on. But the fumble-rooski problems, like we saw rookie mistakes.
Yeah.
We saw Jackson Dart put the ball on the carpet. We saw him throw 2 interceptions, one late in the game. But Cam Scatterbo, for all the good, then he puts the ball on the carpet. Love the big block, but you got to hold on to the football. These guys are carrying it like a loaf of bread.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are. I thought the Saints were probably one of the most winnable games. They win the Chargers game in week 4. Team rallies around them. Dexter Lawrence, big interception, and then they come out and lay a goose egg against the Saints. And now, we'll talk about the Eagles game on a short notice, but a lot of blame to go around. You heard Brian Daboll in the presser, and I thought, Daboll for once. You saw Shane, the reports behind the scenes. Shane has been distancing himself from Brian Daboll.
Yeah.
Well, here was Daboll in his post-game presser, distancing himself from Joe Shane, 2 guys, 2 friends that came over from Buffalo, now trying to both, I think, save their jobs. And there's a lot of blame to go around. You can blame the offense, you can blame the defense, but it starts up top, right? Doesn't it, Dan?
Absolutely. The entire time that this regime has been here, they've been linked together. And at the beginning, that was a positive thing. They were a package deal. It was a 1-2 punch. You had the 2022 season, and it's all fantastic. And look, when you're following up Dave Gettleman, it's kind of hard to go backwards, right? So it was all positive. The reality is this game on Sunday just depicted what's wrong with the Giants front office from top to bottom. From a roster building perspective, this is a team that's only fielding 51 players on the active roster now.
I don't understand it.
You can say salary cap issues. Well, unfortunately, you've had now 4 years to get out from the salary cap hell that Dave Gettleman put you in. If you're still not out from under it, that's going to be on you. And you can find ways to move around money and field the amount of players that you need, especially when you're razor thin at key positions. You're only fielding 2 running backs because Tyrone Tracy is still taking up a roster spot. He was not IR'd, and he's hurt. You had to elevate a kicker. This is the 3rd year in a row that we're doing juggling for a kicker. You have only, not counting Gunnar Olszewski, 4 receivers that can dress for this game. You have 2 veteran receivers on your practice squad, including one that had good chemistry with Jackson Dart, little Jordan Humphrey, during the preseason, and you're opting to not elevate him so that Bo Collins could come in and have terrible reps, an undrafted free agent, and that second interception was on him. He just stopped the route. So you just saw a lot of the issues in this game. And last but not least, you mentioned, the turnovers. They had 5 straight turnovers, and most of them were, I'm not going to blame Jackson Dart. Rookies are going to throw interceptions, and the second one was certainly not his fault. But you're going to have these fumbles. I mean, that's when that happens 5 times in a game, that's on coaching. And you have all of these defensive pass interference penalties. That's what bad teams do. And in year 4 of a regime, if you can't get that together, I get you're going to do some positive things, but you got to be doing more positive things to justify staying around.
Yeah, I see here too. 43 penalties through for the first 5 games, second most in the NFL, and 415 penalty yards leads the NFL. So just a poorly coached, undisciplined team. Yep. And you just wonder, with the owner there, John Mara, battling the Big C, would he really want to make an in-season coaching change? I don't think Shane gets fired in season. And do they go together? Does Daboll survive the season? Is he coaching for his job here? I mean, what do you kind of see here in the forecast?
Obviously, there are a lot of a lot of variables there. And that's something where, we're never going to know exactly what John Mara is thinking. I think the reality at this point that barring something that I just don't see a path towards, both him and Shane have to go. And I know there's been reports that Shane is safer than Dable. A lot of this lands at his feet. And the reality is, even if it didn't, it'd be very hard to get the personnel in here that you want, assumedly the top of the crop of whatever that's going to be, if you have to make them be married to both a GM that they don't want, and, if you're talking about a coach, also assumedly, as long as Jackson Dart stays on this trajectory, you're going to want the front office that comes in to give him a shot to be their franchise quarterback. That you're not going to say, hey, we're picking in the top 5 next year. Let's go after, if there's 2 quarterbacks that come out, if Newsmeyer and somebody else have our attention, that's who we're going to go get. So do I see Dable getting let go in the middle of the season? I think it's possible. I think if you especially took the cancer angle out of it, or not angle, but the scenario out of it, the reality out of it, sure. But I also think what's more important than him actually getting fired in season is that if the Giants are going to move on, that they make that clear before week 18. Because last year, I think they waffled. And even if they did decide to move on from him, at that point, the conversations with the top candidates were already going, So I think they need to be deep in this search in December. I don't think it's going to be a shock to Dable that he's not going to be brought back. And you need to just move on.
All right, interesting stuff. Dan Orlando, about as good as it gets when it comes to breaking down the Big Blue New York Giants, the Big Blue New and Blue podcast here each and every Monday night. We're moving and grooving along. Rookies are making a prominent role for themselves. Obviously, Jackson Dart, the quarterback, will start there. There was some good, probably more bad than good, and a lot of ugly. So everything in between. Break it down for us, Dan.
Well, we've talked a lot of bad so far. So let's focus on a little bit of good for Jackson Dart. Dart was a guy who came in, and the big concern for him was he going to be able to read the field. And honestly, there's still some things he has to work on there, and we're going to touch on that in a second. But he's patient, and he's had pass protection, which is great. He's had really good pass protection, but he's patient. He's seeing the field. He's throwing. He's trying to put some zip on the ball. He needs to put a little bit more zip. But ultimately, I see somebody that is trying to get through reads. He made some great throws to Theo Johnson, some great throws to Daniel Bellinger. I mean, Bellinger tried to fumble away twice too. So I think there was just something in the water down there. But obviously he can make plays with his legs. He's not rattled when he's under pressure, which is something that, quite honestly, I don't know that we've had consistently in the past few years. I think Daniel Jones had his moments, but then once the pressure mounted, he would start folding. So you see a lot of positives from Jackson Dart. You see a guy that's a rookie quarterback. He was not a slam dunk first overall pick. He's not an Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning type prospect. So where he's at right now, I think you have to be encouraged. Now he has to keep stacking it. And some of the things he has to work on, he needs a little bit more power on that ball. That deep shot to Slayton, it ended up being Slayton's second drop of the day. That flea flicker. Honestly, look, that throw should have been out towards the pylon, should have had a little more juice on it. That being said, Slayton should have caught it. But those are the throws. You want to see him get a little bit more arm strength as he continues to grow. I also want to see him reading the entire field more often. From a lot of plays, it looks like he's really just doing a half-field read, multiple progressions, something that they can continue to work on. You could even just see on the broadcast, though. There was times when guys were open and you just didn't see them. So that's something they have to work on. So there's good, there's bad. The fumble is what it is. It didn't even seem like a Daniel Jones type fumble. It just seemed like he just made a mistake. So
it was carelessness.
Yep. Yeah, it was carelessness. And you know what? He's a rookie with everything on his shoulders. I don't have the vibe from him that he's going to be a turnover machine. I mean, the 2 picks, the first one was he had to force a play on 4th down, throw it against Jalen Hyatt, who, you might as well put me out there. And then the second one, you have Bo Collins, a UDFA. And this is something we're going to talk about more in the show. There's just nobody there at receiver. He stops on his route and just lets the defender run the route. So I think Jackson Dart's still showing a lot of promise. He showed me more than he showed last week. What does he do on Thursday? Is that deep pass finally connect? Because that's what I'm watching for now. Is he going to continue to build every week?
Yeah, I think you got to limit the mistakes. You got to play turnover-free football. And, when you're turning the ball all over the place, you can't win in the National Football League. And, a pretty clumsy fumble there. There's no excuse for that. You can't hold the football out there like a loaf of bread, right? And so
you can coach that.
Yeah, you can coach that. Absolutely. I do want to see him take a little bit more accountability in the post game press conference. I didn't see the whole thing. I just saw clips, so maybe I'm judging. But
Yeah, he actually. I'm just because he did. He actually came out and he goes, "Look, I take full responsibility for the loss." And the reporters actually kind of pressed him on it because he really, for everybody on the field, he was really not the main culprit. And he goes, "No, I'm the leader of the offense. It doesn't matter if I'm a rookie. I'm the leader of the offense. So if the offense doesn't perform, that's on me." So actually, that was something. And again, you're obviously
okay.
you look at everything going on in the world of football all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was big. That was impressive.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Good. All right. Cam Scatterboo now, obviously a lot of good, and then overshadowed by the bad. Again, you take positive takeaways, but rookie mistakes and the turf the turf monster got the Giants in a different way with the fumbles this week.
I mean, Scatterboo is a microcosm and a macrocosm of what's wrong with the Giants. I mean, think on the macrocosm side, he's great. I mean, look, he's a great contributor. He's had one bad play in, really his entire career up until this point. I mean, there's been some things that weren't fantastic. That's going to happen. He's had one disaster, which the amount that they're using him is really not bad, but that's the problem. This Giants team that has had 4 years to build and bring in talent, and I get Neighbors is hurt and all of that. You're still relying completely on first-year players, second-year players. The entire, the quarterback is a rookie in his second start. Scatterboo, because now you don't have Tracy and you're not adding any other running backs other than Singletary, is running 80% of the time. He was bound to have a disaster play. That doesn't excuse what happened. I mean, that's, again, hold on to the ball. It sounded like he had a problem with his gloves, whatever that is. But you look at Scatterboo and go, look, this is a great player, but he's being used to death. He's being used out of what he should be used at, and we're not getting the most out of him. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and tie him to Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton's a former fifth-round pick. He's a fantastic third, second outside wide receiver on your team. But now he's been forced into a role that he doesn't belong, and that's the New York Giants, and you're just not getting from him what you need to get. So Scatterboo, I've been really impressed with his pass protection. I know he had one big whiff in this game, but really impressed with his pass protection, impressed with how he runs. He breaks tackles. It's great to see. But yeah, if you're going to run a guy into the ground, eventually he's going to fumble the ball.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, he's just got to be smarter about it. They got to be more disciplined. Maybe they can have Aaron Glenn come over and teach ball security issues. I saw him in practice trying to swap balls away, but they need to practice that. And, obviously the rookie class is making a big impact, and none drafted higher than Abdul Carter. Now, he had a bunch of pressures in this game and was in the backfield there making some noise. What's your takeaway from Abdul Carter?
He's still not finishing. And that's something where, look, I think that's going to come. It's not something I'm worried about, but you ultimately saw a guy yesterday that, maybe if he was a tick faster, is making a play that this team needs. And that's going to sound like a harsh criticism. It's not. This is nitpicking with Abdul Carter. For a rookie, he's certainly doing a lot, even as a third overall pick. He's wrecked games for them. He wrecked the Chargers game. Is a big part of why they won. He technically doesn't have a sack in that game because Justin Herbert had to throw it away and get intentional grounding. But, Carter was a guy along with the rest of the pass rush. They were just not getting it done yesterday. And I think a lot of that has to do with, too, how, Rattler was schemed. He was getting rid of the ball fast. And also the fact that the Giants just don't have the secondary that you probably need to pair with this pass rush to have the elite defense that you could potentially have. And that's going to be something we're going to talk about a lot in the offseason. How many resources do the Giants put into this secondary to kind of elevate it so that this excellent pass rush isn't wasted on, defensive backs that are always going to leave at least one receiver wide open.
Well, yeah, I mean, and Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland, two other New York Giant players in free agency, they just really haven't played up to expectations. They were signed to big money contracts, and they look like a shell of themselves.
I mean, Holland had, a couple of good plays. One was taken off the board by Deonte Banks, another Joe Shane first overall draft pick that they traded assets for, and has been a disaster unless he's returning kicks. So, look, Holland had a decent game, but overall they have not gotten anything out of him that's spectacular. This is a guy that, quite honestly, they could have just re-signed Xavier McKinney, and then the assets that they poured into Tyler Nubin could have went towards a more critical position. Tyler Nubin is not playing well at all, and this is somebody that's severely regressed. I get the feeling with Tyler Nubin that with better coaching, they can get him back on track. I'm not out on Tyler Nubin yet. But I think he's one of those guys that if he was on another team right now would look good, which as a quick aside, if you're watching Giants broadcast now, it's almost a joke. Every cut in from another game is a former Giant scoring a touchdown. So yeah, I think Paulson Adebo has not come up with the picks. He's probably a very good number 2 more than he is a very good number 1, but he's been holding it down as a number 1 corner. He's been taking away that side of the field. You're not seeing him on the screen a lot. So that's a positive. But ultimately, the secondary as a whole, when you get beyond Adebo, when you get beyond Holland when he's having a good game, is a massive liability.
Yeah, and it goes back to the coaching too. Like it makes you wonder. And you mentioned McKinney, who led the NFL in interceptions last year. Don't forget about Julian Love, who they let walk away too. And I know Love has been banged up a little bit this year, but he had a monster season last year. And you're right. You turn on the TV, and Indiana Jones is making plays. Saquon Barkley's making plays. Leonard Williams they had in town. I mean, they got rid of so much talent. I mean, even Sterling Shepard, to rub it in, is making plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's like none of these guys do that wearing the big blue, and they leave here. Darren Waller is all of a sudden scoring touchdowns week after week. Boy, you think they could use a good playmaking tight end in addition to Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger and all these guys.
And Evan Ingram played a role in beating the Eagles.
Evan Ingram. I mean, and the list goes on. And it's just funny. Like these guys, they come in, and even Jabril Peppers is making plays for the Steelers. I saw it comes in, makes an impact. Like it's just unbelievable. If they just kept the players they had, the roster actually wouldn't be so down and out.
Yep, agreed.
And Darius out, you get rid of a guy like Leonard Williams, you bring in a guy like Darius Alexander, Dan.
Finally coming into his own a little bit. He had an impact in his game. He had what looked like a sack. It was technically a tackle for loss because they deemed that Rattler had become a runner at that point, but he took the quarterback down behind the line. So I'm going to call it a sack for a guy that had a very slow offseason. He was a little bit nicked up, didn't really get a good run in minicamp or in training camp, was still just kind of getting acclimated. This is a guy that's an older college player or was an older college player, played at Toledo, so he wasn't exactly playing in the SEC every Saturday. So honestly, when he had a slow start, there were some concerns, especially for me. I was wondering if maybe a guy like John Michael Schmitz gets knocked a lot, that maybe he peaked already and this was the best we were going to see because Schmitz is also older, played in Big Ten, not the SEC. But ultimately started to see some quality stuff out of him and, stacking a decent game on last week. Granted, the Saints guards are not all world players, but still, this is a guy that in the preseason was just getting washed out of plays, playing against guards that were probably worse than who was on the field for the Saints. So, you like to see that. The Giants desperately need another interior defensive lineman presence to really step up, especially a young one that they're going to have for 4 years, because they're probably still going to have to add to that position at the end of the year, but you need depth there. So that's a really great thing to see. So I was really impressed with what I saw from Darius Alexander, and I hope that he continues to stack those performances.
All right, one more rookie we'll talk about, Bo Collins. You mentioned him earlier. I actually had big expectations for Bo Collins, but that's the reality of the NFL. Like, you can only have so many impact rookie players, especially undrafted rookie players, and you throw them into the fire, and this is what happens, right, Dan?
Yeah, with him, I think the frustrating thing is that like the fans, I get it. It's easy to get excited about a guy like that. Almost every preseason, there's that undrafted rookie receiver that looks like a superstar, and everybody can't wait to make them the next big thing. And also, look, I think he has potential with good coaching. But if you think back to the preseason, this is something the coaching staff should understand. I get fans not buying in, but look, he had the big play from Russell Wilson, the 80-yard, almost a touchdown, and you get all excited. And then in that same game, then I believe in the next game as well, he struggled knowing where to run his route. And he led to interceptions and missed passes because Russell Wilson went to just throw him another ball, and he was in the wrong spot. And you think, oh, it's preseason, whatever. Look, you decide. You lose Malik Nabers, and I get you're not replacing Malik Nabers, and you're not a Super Bowl contender, so you're not going to go out and say, hey, the Jets, you're 0-5. Do you not want Garrett Wilson or something? I get that. You're not going to go out and try to get DJ Moore. I totally understand. But you need competent receivers. You're trying to grow a rookie franchise quarterback. and you put Bo Collins out there with 2 empty roster spots instead of calling up little Jordan Humphrey, who Dart has a connection with, instead of signing Isaiah Hodgins off a practice squad, instead of getting somebody else to just come in and be a competent player. And then he's a guy who doesn't even run his full route and leads to an interception that completely ended any chance that the Giants came back in the game. So, rough outing for him. And this is a situation where the Giants, if they really don't want to fill those other 2 roster spots, quite honestly, they need to send them back down to the practice squad. And if someone takes them, they take them. But I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, well, we'll get into the 51 roster spots after the commercial break. Before we do break, I want to ask you, I saw today, actually, a little while ago, Treylon Burke, former first-round pick from the Tennessee Titans. He had a collarbone injury. Tennessee released him back in training camp. Mm-hmm. He is now physically cleared and free to sign with anybody. You talk about building a program, finding bodies. I mean, the guy was taken in the first round for a reason. I understand he's had injury issues, but maybe that's a guy they should kick the tires on.
Absolutely, because you should be looking, and I get, we're going to talk about this more after the break. It's kind of awkward because most likely this isn't the regime, but if you're looking at it from a purely Giants standpoint, you need to be thinking, look, over the next year, we need to add to this offensive room, especially at the receiver position. So why not get this young player? And maybe it just didn't work out for him at the first stop. If anything, he's a capable guy for a few games for us now. If it works out, we already got him in the building. We have the first right of refusal to offer him a multi-year contract to bring him back for next year. It makes no sense to not do that. So, look, I think they should be trying to do that. And it's also why I wouldn't be against them trading, some draft capital if there was a young receiver out there that was looking for a new contract and we were going to get the first shot at him and he's a legit playmaker. I'm all for it because regardless of who the regime is, the Giants are going to need receivers next year. But, yeah, why would you not kick the tires on Treylon Burks? He's better than Jalen Hyatt and Bo Collins, that's for sure.
Yeah, why not at this point? And we'll talk more about New Big Blue. We'll talk about some second-year players making an impact or not so much impact after the commercial break. And, of course, they got the short week turnaround against the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll get into all that and more. Of course, New and Blue, a New York Giants podcast, airs each and every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. We also have the All Access Football Daily Show. It's live 7 days a week, 10 a.m. Eastern. Check it out. And when we come back, we'll talk more New York Giants football.
Hey, RIC and a place to be. Ric Serritella checking in from the legendary Jersey Shore for the world-famous All Access Football. And you're tuned in to the All Access Football Daily Show, our newest venture here at the world-famous All Access Football, read by all 32 NFL teams and 50,000 subscribers from around the world. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to work in this great game of football for the past 2 decades. It's our 24th season of providing you independent analysis when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin, whether it's the NFL, college football, NFL draft, CFL, UFL. We'll be with you each step of the way, especially for draft season when we really get into high mode. Of course, it's all brought to you by the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, published in April, featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports with our boots-on-the-ground analysis. We'll be on location at the All-Star Games, the NFL Scouting Combine, the Pro Day Circuit, counting you down to that 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. And be sure you check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got a great promo discount for you listeners at home. If you enter our promo code RICVIP, you'll get a 30% discount off of all of our premium content. You'll unlock the magic. Get our NFL Draft Insider Reports, Scouting Notebook, of course, the World Football All Access Football Report published on Wednesday. It's your new home for real football talk. So follow along, give us a shout. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, a subscribe, and we'll be with you each and every day here, 7 days a week, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off, rain, sleet, hail, snow. The show must go on. For Ric Serritella and the All Access Football Daily Show, keep it locked, everybody.
That's why we paid Dan Orlando the big bucks here, because, not only was I on mute, but he had to correct me during the commercial break. And I saw the Traylon Burks report we were just talking about before the commercial break. I got it on NFL.com, and they reported that Burks had been released in training camp while he was on the IR. But Dan, during the commercial break, pointed out to me, and I just confirmed that Tennessee actually held on to his rights, Dan. So I guess a trade would have to occur.
Who knows? That could very well be the case. I think that would make sense for the Giants. If Tennessee's looking to move on, they're not going to command a high price tag for him. So this could be a situation where maybe a fourth gets it done. And I could see this regime doing it. Absolutely.
Yeah, why not? New and Blue, New York Giants podcast. We're here live each and every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Dan Orlando, Ric Serritella holding it down. All right, we're going to get into some second-year players, actually, Dan, that, are making a name or not making a name for themselves here. And who are some guys you want to talk about?
Well, we'll start with some positives. Theo Johnson, again, he's been up and down, but after 2 solid weeks, let's feel positive about Theo Johnson right now. Obviously had the 2 big touchdown catches, has an amazing connection so far with Jackson Dart. Apparently they're very close friends as well. So look, this is a guy that, just looking at him, he looks at essential casting as, a future Pro Bowl tight end. He's a specimen. He's a guy that gives you that receiving threat. He seems dynamic. Honestly, I think for the Giants, if they can continue to develop him, they're really going to have a legit weapon there. And as I said, they really need to develop that. They can't have it just be the Malik Neighbors show when they're ready to seriously contend, which we hope, even with a new coaching staff, would be as soon as next year if they continue to add talent. So, obviously with him, that's going to be a positive. But, Tyler Newman on the negative side, this is a guy that's regressed. I mentioned earlier in the show, and the Giants tend to have this guy every year, has a decent rookie year. You get excited about it, think, oh, he's only going to build and go up from here. And the progression is just not linear. He took a terrible angle on a potential sack yesterday, gave up the 84, yard touchdown. It was just him being in the wrong spot. You had a similar, play in Dallas. You had him, missing on the Omari Hampton run against the Chargers that kept the Chargers in the game last week. So, again, a team that just walked away from Xavier McKinney and then poured premium draft assets into his replacement. Not a great look for GM Joe Schoen.
Yeah, McKinney, Love, Peppers. I think they'd all be an upgrade over Tyler Newman, who I was high on coming out of Minnesota. But you're right, you wanted to see more this year, and he's kind of taking a step back. Theo Johnson, though, is a guy who was so raw coming out of Penn State. He was only going to get better, and you just wondered when. And it took a quarterback change. And, probably the chemistry, they say they're best friends, might have something to do with it. But, he comes up with big plays. He is a playmaking tight end, but it's just been flashes, right? You just need more consistency for him to take it to the next level. So I agree with you there. Going back on the 51 roster spots, we mentioned it earlier in the show, I've seen teams play with 52 last second situations and they're a man down, but to have 2 men down on game day, what a total competitive disadvantage. And from my understanding, looking at some of the beat reporters, this is not the first time that they've had, suited up 51 players, which is absurd to me. And you saw Brian Daboll, I thought, call out Joe Schoen for that, and for the first time publicly, at least, try to distance himself maybe for Schoen. But this is not like a small blip on the radar. Somebody needs to. I don't understand it, quite frankly. Somebody needs to make sense of it for me.
It's another. I'll do my best. It's another situation where you have the salary cap that they've been perpetually trying to get out from under the entire 4 years that Schoen has been here, and you have that mixed with bad coaching decisions as well as bad front office decisions. Again, the Giants last year, Graham Gano, they didn't bring up a replacement for him when he was nicked up, and he still played against the Commanders, and they essentially didn't have a kicker for that week. Then you go into this year, and you don't have a great backup plan for Gano, who gets banged up, and then you're left without a kicker for a full game again. You go into this week, they're playing, they have 2 open roster spots, and I get that they're trying to manage the cap and things like that. But if you have a roster that's completely healthy and you're going to have to sit a bunch of guys anyway, I get it for like a once, in your career as a GM, you go, look, for whatever reason, the two guys we would be adding to the roster would be inactive anyway. Like, I guess in theory, I could wrap my arms around it. But you're in a situation where you have a banged up roster. You are paper thin at running back. You don't even really have receivers that beyond the starting two in Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton, you feel comfortable being on the field. Jalen Hyatt, there's a belief out there that the coaching staff doesn't even want Jalen Hyatt on the roster. He's being forced on them by the GM. So you have him as the next guy up. You have Bo Collins as the next guy up. And you are not bringing in receivers yet. Over the course of this regime, you got to make sure you got 3 linebackers ready to be on the punt coverage team, because God forbid you don't have, a linebacker no one's ever heard of. You don't need 3 running backs on the roster, but you do need somebody on punt coverage. So that's just the type of thing that's always been a head scratcher. I think it's going to have a lot to do with what undoes this regime, because ultimately, again, they just shoot themselves in the foot. They do things that are questionable and make things harder on themselves. And I think a lot about, they say with Daniel Jones, the final straw was his blown flea flicker pass in Germany against the Panthers. With Joe Judge, it was him doing the 3 quarterback sneaks from their own 1-yard line. That was just like oh my God, like we can't have this anymore. This is going to be one of many things that I think you just look back at and I go, like, this regime's not serious. They're not a real NFL regime. And you have young talent, even though you've sent all of this talent away, you still have young talent and you've headed in the right direction. But now this group has done what they're going to do for you, and you need to move on and you need to get serious people in here.
Yeah, I just don't understand how you go into games 2 men down from the opponent, especially you need as many wins as you can get here. And Dante Turbo Boost Miller, probably arguably the fastest player on your team.
Yeah.
Why not throw him into the fold? See if he can burst out for a big play. I just don't understand the logic. He plays special teams. He could actually line up in the slot and play receiver if you need him to. And
you manufacture some touches for him. He could, throw him a screen pass, see what happens. There's just no reason to it. And again, you have Deonte Banks, and I get it. The front office needs to see him do something. He's your first corner off the bench, and you got him returning kicks because you don't want to elevate a Turbo Miller or a Smith Marset or somebody else that's supposed to be doing that job. You don't want to have a third running back in there so that you can really, maybe give Scatterboo a little bit of a break every once in a while. You have the entire offense run through Scatterboo running up the middle 4 times a drive at least. It's just not serious. It's the way a teenager would run a Madden team. And it's just, I think this group has brought you as far as you're going to, and this is just the latest example of it.
All right, let's take a look ahead at the future. New and Blue, a New York Giants podcast. Dan Orlando, Ric Serritella here, and it's not going to get any easier, is it, Dan? Because here we go with a short week against Philly. Then they got the Broncos, and then the Eagles at Philadelphia after that. Where do you want to begin?
I think it's, number one, I think if Malik Neighbors had stayed healthy, I think the Giants maybe win this game. And I think it would have just masked issues. I don't think it's, hey, if Malik Neighbors was healthy, the Giants are going to the playoffs or anything like that. But, man, the Eagles coming off a loss to the Broncos, if the Giants had played a decent game, against the Saints, I think you're looking at this as like, this could be fun. Maybe you're catching the Eagles off guard. They're a little bit unhappy there. The interior of the offensive line is not doing well. One of my best friends is an Eagles fan. Absolutely loves the Eagles. And he's the only person I'd ever go to a Giants-Eagles game with. We did it last year. And I make fun of him all the time. He will text me about like a missed tackle in their game, complaining about it as they're winning by 3 touchdowns, while like my team is, in their 14th straight loss, that type of situation. And, he's telling me, he goes, man, like our interior offensive line, he goes, like AJ Brown, the only thing I can say about AJ Brown is that you just some people just have to be upset about something, so that's something where I think is interesting. Man, I would love to see Jackson Dart with actual receivers, not necessarily win this game, but make some plays, right? Have some pride, have it not be them just getting dog walked like they have in the past. But ultimately, look, it's going to be a really tough game. I don't think they win it. Then they're going to play the Broncos, who are a good team, and then they got to play the Eagles again. I mean, this is just like a joke at this point. If you're a Giants fan and you're watching for anything other than just seeing the young players develop and not looking at the final score, I really have nothing I can tell you that's going to make you happy.
Yeah, maybe Andrew Thomas has been a bright spot a little bit,
Yeah, I mean,
they're going to need him because the Broncos, like, they sacked Hurts 6 times. They had 62 sacks last year. They've got 21 sacks through 5 games.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a big challenge for the New York Giants offensive line.
Yeah, and I'm such a genius that I actually, I saw the matchups this week. I saw Broncos versus Eagles, and I saw Giants versus Saints. And I have the Broncos defense in fantasy, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get a little, you don't want to just do the same thing every week. I'm going to put the Giants defense in and bench the Broncos defense because they're going to feast on Spencer Rattler. They're going to he's the first non-high-level quarterback they've faced. They're just going to tee off, and they do nothing. And I also I played Darius Slayton in one of my leagues instead of Malik Neighbors, who come on. So anyway, not my best week, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the Giants. I do think Jackson Dart is actually going to show you some good things. I think there's going to be some passes we're excited about that just aren't completed because they're being thrown to, like Vince Papale or somebody out there. So like it's really going to be rough. But the good news is, I think we're going to have a fantastic draft pick. So that's where I'm at. Not even halfway to Halloween. That's
where do you want to go with that draft pick, Dan?
Jordan Tyson right now. And look, there's plenty of time. Really, I should say receiver because there's plenty of time for that all to change. But the Giants desperately need to add to this offense. And a lot of people, rightfully so, critique. They go, look, the Giants did some exciting things this offseason. But on offense, the only thing they really did was add 3 quarterbacks, which one might be the future of the franchise, and that's fantastic. The $10 million that went to Russell Wilson, in hindsight, really should have just went towards either a stud offensive lineman or an offensive weapon, even when Malik Neighbors come back. And for the sake of this discussion, let's say he's Adrian Peterson, and he comes back, and he's exactly as he was before. Like, let's just say that for this discussion. It can't be the Malik Neighbors show. Just like when it was Saquon Barkley, it couldn't be the Saquon show and still get the results. I mean, a part of the reason he gets the results in Philly is because he has an awesome offensive line and they have a great tight end, or at least, had a good tight end.
Yeah, and 2 Pro Bowl receivers, the best offensive line in football, sure.
Yeah. Like, you can't just say, hey, we're going to stack 8 guys in the box and stop Saquon. You legitimately cannot do that. So with the Giants, like, you could. So the Giants really need, Neighbors needs to be part of a platoon. And that's just something that, hey, I was thinking about it this week, quite honestly. Like, back in 2008, and it was a different era of football, and teams didn't necessarily have, 4 offensive stars that lit up the field, stuff like that, unless they were the Rams, like in the early 2000s. But when Plaxico Burress went down, that Giants team had been mauling teams. I mean, they had just been dog walking the entire league. And then when Plaxico Burress goes down, they really played terrible. They snuck out one. They beat the Commanders, the Redskins at the time. They snuck out a win against the Panthers, but they fell apart. And they were out. They were one and done in the playoffs against an Eagles team that was like a wild card team back then. So ultimately, what I look at this as, they need to add offensive firepower. It's not going to be a running back. It's not going to be a tight end. I'd be shocked. They need to add a wide receiver and a first round caliber guy at that.
No, I would think that makes a lot of sense. Tyson, Neighbors, maybe Tyson too comes in and becomes the number 1. Who knows?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Theo Johnson takes the next step, and you've got some 3 amigos for Jackson Dart to throw to.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to definitely need some more offensive line help. That's for certain.
Yeah.
And the defense, pull a ticket, take a list. All right. Any final thoughts as we wrap up another edition, our 11th episode here on the New and Blue New York Giants podcast? Dan, any final thoughts for the people?
11 episodes and 1 win, so that's awesome. That's a great hit rate. No, so look, Thursday night, tune in just to see how Jackson Dart does. Does Theo Johnson continue to stack some nice catches, maybe a touchdown? Does Cam Scatteraboo bounce back? These are the things you're watching for. And honestly, like, guys, we've had to sit through just watching Daniel Jones and all of this for years past. Enjoy it. Enjoy watching Jackson Dart hopefully continue to grow. He's going to play against a good defense. If he makes some good plays, fantastic. That's something where you should be excited about it. I mean, if for anyone who's old enough to remember Eli, and I think now we're at the point where like, hey, lots of fans maybe we're too young to be watching Eli. His rookie year, he had some flashes and he had some games that were like, oh my God, like what just happened? The Ravens game is the notorious one. I remember I was at the first one where he really started to look like a legit NFL quarterback against the Steelers in 2004. Him and Roethlisberger had this great duel. So, ultimately, I think if you continue to see Dart do well, does he continue to go through his progressions and be patient and take off when he needs to, then there's something to be excited about. So, look, tune in on Thursday night. Don't expect it to be a score you want, but what the hell, we beat the Chargers. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you never know. These Thursday night primetime affairs have been interesting in the short turnaround week. I will say the Eagles did show some flaws there against Denver, and they do have some offensive line issues a little bit this year, and they took a lot of losses on the defensive side of the ball, especially on the pass rush. And, the pass rush is one thing the Giants do well, and you got to give credit to Brian Burns. Kayvon Thibodeau has stepped his game up. Obviously, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter. You just wonder, can that defensive line create enough issues and problems like we just saw with the Broncos where maybe they got a shot? Maybe they can keep it close. Maybe Jackson Dart plays the game of his life. And that's what you hope for if you're a New York Giants fan here on Thursday night.
I think for them to win, because if they had Malik Neighbors, I'd feel a little – I wouldn't think they're going to win, but I'd feel better about them catching the Eagles at the right time. I think if they do win, the key to that game is that Theo Johnson just goes off, continues on this path he's on. Looks like Slayton's probably not even going to play. I mean, he's got a hamstring injury on a short week, so maybe he does, but we'll see. I think Theo Johnson's going to just have to go off, and maybe it's a little Jordan Humphrey game because they had to play him. So we'll see. But you're right. If they win that game, it's because Jackson Dart just balled out.
Yeah, and of course we'll get some tush-push additions, I'm sure. We'll see how the Giants prepare or don't prepare for that one.
The Eagles only have it's only 3rd and 8 for the Eagles, or 1st and 8, I should say. They only have to get to that point. So the Giants don't necessarily have that interior that you're excited about. They just have to run the tush-push away from Dex, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll come back next week, talk about it, be about it. That's what we do each week here on the New and Blue New York Giants podcast. This was our 11th edition here on October 6, 2025. We'll come back next week and talk about it again. Thanks so much for tuning in. Before you go, if you don't mind smashing that like button, whether you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, X, YouTube, smash that like button, share it, subscribe it, and we'll come back next week and be about it.
Hey, all right. Ric Serritella checking in from the legendary Jersey Shore for the world famous All Access Football, and you're tuned in to the All Access Football Daily Show, our newest venture here at the world famous All Access Football, read by all 32 NFL teams and 50,000 subscribers from around the world. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to work in this great game of football for the past 2 decades. It's our 24th season of providing you independent analysis when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin, whether it's the NFL, college football, NFL draft, CFL, UFL. We'll be with you each step of the way, especially for draft season when we really get into high mode. Of course, it's all brought to you by the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, published in April, featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports with our boots-on-the-ground analysis. We'll be on location at the All-Star Games, the NFL Scouting Combine, the Pro Day Circuit, counting you down to that 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. And be sure you check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got a great promo discount for you listeners at home. If you enter our promo code RICVIP, you'll get a 30% discount off of all of our premium content. You'll unlock the magic. Get our NFL Draft Insider Reports, Scouting Notebook, of course, the World Football All Access Football Report, published on Wednesday. It's your new home for real football talk. So follow along, give us a shout. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, a subscribe, and we'll be with you each and every day here, 7 days a week, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off. Rain, sleet, hail, snow, the show must go on. For Ric Serritella and the All Access Football Daily Show, keep it locked, everybody.
My dad has a message for you. He said, you are watching All Access Football.